beauty of this is our responsibility. And I speak of this because you are the warriors of today. You are the people living on the lands of the indigenous people who were slaughtered to make way for the George Bushes and the Dick Cheneys. And as a result of that, we have inherited those spirits of all those restless ancestors who are telling us, the spirits that brought us to this room today, to fight back, to not be afraid of what they have done to us in the past. They can't stop us. They can stop me, they can stop you, but they can't stop this movement. We are not anything new. We are not the product of some philosophical, Western European thought. We are not a religion. We're not an ideology. We are a life force of resistance to evil and to the destruction of all life. It's about worldviews, in my opinion. It's about the worldview that was most recently held in this country by the indigenous people that saw all life, not just animals and plants, but the rocks, the water, the mountains, the sky, as living beings, as entities, as our relations. We're told to respect them in a way that we respect ourselves. We are told to fight for them because they cannot fight for themselves. There's a lot of people, well, I don't know if there's a lot of people here. I saw a couple children here today. I'm very glad to see that. I have a little 2-year-old back in Tucson. And my son's mom, like many mothers, like most mothers, her commitment is to her child. She is the one whose sole duty is to protect that child. When I had my son, I feared that somehow having a child would take me away from the struggle. I found the exact opposite to be true. Because I am a warrior, because I have accepted this responsibility that Creator bestows on us to represent the animal nations. Those are my constituents. I don't give a damn what mainstream animal rights groups say about me. I don't give a damn what the opposition says about me. I don't care what the FBI says about me. I just care about what my constituents think of me. And my constituents are the natural world. And to them, being a warrior is about protecting those who cannot protect ourselves. My child, the reason I was given this child was to protect him from the evils that are around him, around all of us. It's my job, it's all of our jobs as warriors to protect our children, because there is no hope for those in power today. They're lost in their greed, their hearts are turned black, they're callous, they no longer are in touch with reality, in my opinion. As a result of that, we are forced to take action, just as my ancestors did before. We were told in a prophecy 500 years ago that we would face such evil. We used to be a pacifist nation. Our people were primarily vegetarian, living off the land, occasionally eating some shellfish that came ashore. But other than that, we lived in a nonviolent society. And our prophecies told us that that was to end when the invader arrived. And we were given a choice, much as you were given a choice today. And that choice from Creator was, we could choose to remain as we were, but we could no longer stay in our human form. We would have to take the form of animals. We would have to move into the oceans, live in rocks, in the mountains. And those were the Sudan, our ancestors, the people who came before. Those people who chose to remain that way, we had a 3-day ceremony where a live deer came to us and instructed us in the dances that we should do to honor him, because not only would we be leaving our old ways behind, but we would have to be adopting a much more violent existence. We would have to learn how to kill, not just other people, but our animal relations too. So this deer instructed us in the proper way we were to ask for their lives of those brothers and sisters before we took them. And if we failed to do that, bad things would become of us. At that ceremony, those people who decided to change and to face the challenges became the Yoemim, the Yaqui people as they are today. Yaqui as a word is not in our language. Yaqui was a bastardized Spanish word that meant stubborn, capricious, and ignorant. That was the best word that they could use to describe us, because they recognized in 1533, when they met us, empowered as we were with our prophecy, we formed the Wikoyahuara, the Warrior Society. And we met the Spanish. And twice we defeated them. But we knew inevitably they were going to take over our homeland, as they surely did. And that began a 200-year resistance that, as I said, ended in 1927, but in many ways continues today. You are given that same choice today. You can choose to remain as you are, privileged Americans, mostly living in the middle class. We can all choose to fall back on our privilege, cut our hair, take off our patches, go back to school, as I said, get a nice career job, and just become another one of the sheep. Or we can choose to meet the challenge, as my ancestors did. And that is the obligation that I believe you are answering. It never discourages me when events like this house 100, only 200, 300 people, because that's all we need, folks. Most of my activism I've done in my life has been with 4 or 5 good warriors. I've always said, just give me 5 or 6 good warriors, it's all I need. That is all we need to make a change. That is all that is usually led to change, is a handful of people who are willing to make the ultimate sacrifice of their own freedom, that which they love the most, that they're willing to die for it. And that's where we are today. We are also where the civil rights movement was 30 years ago. We are where the suffragist movement was in the early 1900s. We are where the anti-slavery movement was in the mid-1800s. We are at that point where society is doing everything it can to stop us from speaking the truth, from giving people hope, from giving them an alternative to apathy, from giving them an avenue of action. That is what they're trying to prevent. And that is where other movements have overcome the obstacles to gain freedom and victory. And that's what we're going to have to do, as I spoke earlier of. It never worries me when the opposition calls us terrorists. When we live in a society where violence and murder and torture, imprisonment without due process is the norm, it is the option of choice to be an illegal terrorist compared to a legitimate soldier, police officer, corporate executive, vivisector, slaughterhouse worker, who legitimately practice violence on a daily basis. These people work with violence every day. They spread violence every day. How much violence have we committed? What have we done? The most I have done is just to target the weapons of mass destruction, the tools that are being used to torture animals and destroy the earth and abuse people's rights. That is the most ultimate nonviolent action one can take in this society, to take away the weapon from the hands of the person that would use it. And that is what is necessary in this time and age. As I said, all of the victories that we have won have been without a shot being fired. I came into this movement with the history that I told you of as an indigenous warrior. I was given the book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, to read when I was 12 years old by my mother. She says, you have to read this. This is the story of our people. This is what happened to us. And when I read that book, my world was crushed. I was a child. I loved animals. I loved to go camping and hiking and fishing with my family. And when I read and learned what this government, who claimed to represent me, had done to my brothers and sisters, I knew I could not spend my life living in such a society. And at that young age, I contemplated suicide. Because if that was the world that awaited me, I didn't want any part of it. I still don't want any part of it. That's when I learned of the American Indian movement. That's when I heard of Paul Watson being kicked out of Greenpeace because he took a club out of a sealer's hand and threw it in the water, which violated their nonviolent code. When I knew that people just like me existed and were out there standing up to the most powerful industries, the most powerful governments on this planet, and achieving victory, I knew that that was my path. I didn't read the books. I didn't go to countless demonstrations, and after being beat on the head countless times, decided to take direct action. You don't have to ask an indigenous person to trust the government or to expect change from them. 1,500 broken treaties later, if they meant to keep their word, they had more than ample opportunity to do so. So I spent my first years working with the Sea Shepherd Society, and I had the good fortune of learning the power of the direct action warrior, the power of one, the power of a small group of people working together You know, the Sea Shepherd Society, when I joined it, was a very ragtag organization operating on a budget of like $250,000